Huffington Post readers. This is Erica Duncan from The Road Between Employment and Entrepreneurship. And I'm happy to present to you Matthew Smith, who is going to be sharing a bit about his journey, his own road between employment and entrepreneurship. Matt quit his job earlier this year and has now moved to Valencia, Spain. He's pursuing his passions, pursuing different areas of his life, which he's going to be sharing with you. And I'm really excited for Matt to just share some insights and lessons he's learned during the first few months that he's launched out on his own. So thank you so much for joining us, Matt.
No problem, Erica.
So let's start with your career background. So let's go back to the beginning when you were in your career. Tell us what you were doing, where you were doing it. Just kind of give us a little bit of a timeline as to your professional journey before you quit your job earlier this year.
Mm-hmm. So I suppose my professional journey was very similar to a lot of other people that chose to go down the finance, the law, the accountancy route. In that I finished university, and after a period of travelling, I joined Deloitte and qualified as a tax accountant with Deloitte. So I was there for around about 4.5 years. I then took a little bit more time out to travel again, before moving down to London to take up a role in financial services, still in the world of tax. I was working for a bank. I was there for around about 4 years, just over 4 years. And I left there in when was it now? The end of May this year. So I left at the end of May. I came over to Spain, and I've set myself up here in Spain now. I think. It's been a strange journey for me, if you like, because the kind of the feeling of knowing I needed to do something different other than, working in banking, working in tax, working in finance for large corporates. It's kind of a feeling that has gathered pace over the years. And I think sometimes, and I know I'd had thoughts about leaving that corporate game before. But for whatever reason, at the time, I obviously was not ready to make that step. But when this year came around, the time had never been more right for me, and it was very much a case, or I certainly felt it was very much a case of it was going to be now or never, really. I was fortunate, or you might say unfortunate, to be in a period in my life where I don't have particularly many responsibilities in terms of family, in terms of children, etc. So the opportunity was there for me, having spent a number of years in the corporate world. So having qualified as an accountant, having spent 10 years in the world of tax, and the opportunity was there for me to go away and do something different, which, as I said, is something that had been a growing feeling inside me for a number of years, and the time was right, and after much thought, after many kind of internal conversations as to, is this a good idea, is this a bad idea, what if this, what if that, I made the jump earlier this year, and it's been the best thing that I've done. It's been it's been an eye-opening change, and it's been a fantastic change in so many ways. Not without difficulty, but I think, I don't think when you're making a fundamental change to the way in which you live your life, I don't think you can expect that to happen without difficulty. It kind of comes with it. But no, like I said, I wouldn't change the decision I made for the world. So yeah, sorry, I've rambled on a little bit.
No, that's great. There are several points I want to touch on, but one thing you mentioned was that, there were several points throughout your career when you thought about leaving. So maybe we can talk about that, because I think for a lot of people, you know, me included, it wasn't like you decide to leave your job and then you immediately leave. You know, there is kind of that, at points you kind of question, okay, do I want to continue down this career path, or do I want to do my own thing? So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, when was that? When did you first have that thought of maybe I want to do something different? And how did it build up to you finally deciding this year that it was now or never?
Mhm. So I think, you know, I can think of probably three key moments really. When I was back at Deloitte, when I was just starting out in my career, like I said, I was there for around about 4 years, but I got to the point there where I thought, you know, kind of big four kind of working environments tend to be, you know, yes, there's the opportunity of partnership, if you like, which is the golden carrot that's dangled at the end of the road. But the trade-off to get there was something I was never comfortable with. It was never really for me. It felt like, I remember feeling at the time that it felt like in order to achieve that end goal, you pretty much had to make your job, your work, the number one priority in your life, regardless of anything else, or regardless of personal circumstance, regardless of other things that might be happening in your life. And so that was never really for me at the time. And so I decided, okay, well, if this isn't for me, then maybe I take the qualification that I had, my accountancy qualification, and go into the corporate world, so outside of public accountancy practice. So I work for two companies down in London, both multinationals, both in financial services. And you know, I suppose I approached that thinking that those feelings that I had in Big Four accountancy would somehow disappear and be replaced with, you know, this is a fantastic alternative. But you know, the longer I was there, the more I think I realised that for as long as you're an employee, particularly in large organisations, your time, the use of your time, and the use of your energy, and the use of your time is dictated to you by other people, and that will always be the case. That can't change. You know, you're paid to do a job. You'll have a boss. You're paid effectively to do as your boss tells you to do. To put it very simply, and I always, for me, the difficulty was that I always felt that whilst somebody else is in charge of your time, and whilst you're contractually obliged to be at a particular site between particular hours, actually the control over your life is not something that you have. It's something that other people have. Some of those people may be people that you get on with well, you respect, and you enjoy working with, for, etc. Others maybe not so. But the key thing for me was that I felt that I would never have full control over my life whilst I was spending 5 out of 7 days a week having my time dictated by and my energy and what I do in those 5 out of 7 days dictated by not by me. So that was I suppose. And I suppose if I think carefully, you know, like I said, when I left Big Four accountancy and travelled for a period, I think I convinced myself then that, you know, I've worked hard to get this qualification. I should be using it with a large corporate or within a large organisation. And I think at the time, you know, you think all of those things probably because that's what we're programmed to think. You know, you're programmed to think that if you do well at school, if you go to university, if you get a degree, if you then go on to become, I don't know, a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, or a consultant, you know, I think we're programmed to think that these are the things that we must be doing to be successful. And I suppose my last couple of years in the corporate world down in London, I went through a period of really trying to identify what it was that I considered success to be, and what I consider to be what works for me and what I want out of what I do for a living. And as I was going through that process, it became clear to me that the things that maybe other people might want, or other people might think that they might want, were not the things that were really important to me. And I think probably the best example of that is the fact that, throughout the 10 years that I was in that world, if you like, I achieved a number of promotions, and I suppose on paper my corporate journey looked pretty good. I'd worked in Big Four accountancy, a couple of promotions there, moved over into financial services, a couple of promotions there. And so on paper, it all looks great. It all looks fine. It all looks dandy. As you get promoted, you get more money, and the obvious benefits that come with that. I suppose another thing is status. But when I really put some thought into what I wanted and how those things made me feel over the years, I realised that actually promotions, titles, etc., they've never really meant anything to me. All it's really meant is, well, there's an extra few £100 in your bank each month. And I never really, whenever I was promoted, I never thought to myself, I was never overwhelmed with emotion. It was kind of, well, okay, but that's supposed to happen, isn't it? You do a particular job, you do a good job of it for a couple of years, and there will be another opportunity to take a step up. So it was never, I never really celebrated those things the way other people may have done. And I think probably because, over these 10 years, that growing feeling that, there's something else that I should be doing with my life, I suppose really began to manifest itself. But like I said, it wasn't something that just happened for me. It was something that I think was a feeling and a knowledge of myself, if you like, that grew over time.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, and I suppose for me, I needed to have those experiences to come to this point now.
Yeah, because you mentioned that one of the things that, happened as a result of growing in your career was that you would get these promotions, and the promotions led to a couple extra £100 in your bank account every month, which is a pretty, even if you were having those feelings about status not really, doing it for you, that money can be a really powerful reason to stay. And I think it's why a lot of people stay. So can you talk a little bit about that? How did money play into your decision, and did it have a hold on you? And what got you to a point where, if the money kind of was keeping you in it, what got you to a point where you were able to say no to the extra money to pursue other things that would fill you up?
So the whole money thing was a massive issue for me. It was the biggest issue for me in terms of making that jump from where I was to where I am now. I think it probably is for most people, and I think it's completely understandable. At the end of the day, you need to earn money to live, and most people's fear, I think, and it was, and I suppose to an extent, I suppose, still is a fear. And it took me a while, when I left back in May, I came over to Spain, and I had a couple of ideas of what I wanted to do. In terms of work, outside of work, I wanted to learn the language. It was a passion of mine. It was something I'd always wanted to do. But I remember I'd started Spanish courses a couple of times. I think I'd had 3 goes actually of starting Spanish courses in the UK. And as with all of these things, when you go into a couple of classes a week for an hour or so, it just doesn't happen, does it? Anyway, so yeah, I came over with a couple of ideas as to what I wanted to do, but being completely honest with you here, and you know, I mentioned it when we spoke the other day. It really took me a while to get comfortable with the fact that there's not going to be 12 paychecks landing in my account every month. Um, and I think almost that the further you progress in the corporate world, you know, obviously the more you end up being paid. And I think almost the more that you're paid probably increases that fear, because you're going from a position of having a very good monthly income to having initially nothing. So I think that fear probably escalates, the more success, if you like, the articulating this very well. I suppose the more you've come from, the higher that fear is, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that was, for a few months, that was a big issue. And one of the things I was doing then, actually, as a result of this, was I was kind of keeping half an eye on corporate opportunities still. And I spent a couple of months doing this, until I came to the point where I realised, this is the only reason I have half an eye on corporate opportunities is because I'm worried about the whole money side of things. And I realised I was doing it purely not because I wanted to go back to that, not because I wanted to do these roles that I was looking at. But purely the fear of the not having money was there, and was obviously an issue that I needed to work through. But and again, I suppose I needed to go through that to be at the point where I am now. Now, like I mentioned, to an extent, those worries are still there. And what I mean by that is that when you work for yourself, as you know, Erica, you kind of, there's never you get out of it exactly what you put in. So if for example, if for example you kind of I don't know, maybe you go out on a Thursday evening, have a few drinks, and your head feels a bit lousy in the morning, Nobody in the corporate game, you might think, well, I could go and sit in the office and just get through the morning, not being particularly productive, etc. But when you work for yourself, you understand very, very quickly that if you're not there and present and doing what you need to do, nobody else is earning that money for you. It's solely down to you. And I think you can either look at that two ways. You can look at that as very, very scary, which I think was probably where I was back in the summer, or you can look at it from the other perspective, which is, isn't this fantastic that I'm so in control of how I earn my money and who I earn my money from? And that's where, that's where I'm at with that now. I've maybe gone slightly off topic there.
Well, I actually want to stay with this because you're right. I mean, money is probably the biggest, if not one of the biggest things that keeps people in their career, or as you said, even if they jump out, kind of keeping their eye on opportunities where they can get that paycheck. So let's talk about when you first came out, and you were talking about how money was a really scary thing because you had to rely on yourself and your own efforts to create it. Can you talk a little bit about that fear and how it was showing up in your life?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I suppose the first thing I'd say is that, I mean, you need to have some cash behind you, I think, before you make that jump. I think it would be very, very difficult from going from a point of having no savings or anything, so having no cushion, to leaving the corporate game and then trying to do something yourself, because there's a period that you have to go through, isn't there, where income is low, and where income is you're trying to build up that income base. So I actually, if we maybe go back half a step, so when I left, I had some cash put away exactly for this purpose. Just before I left, I was I was given the opportunity to take up a secondment opportunity with work, which would have been for a couple of years, and with all these all things of this nature, you get paid well on secondment deals, and so there was the opportunity there for me to do that for another couple of years and really add to that pot of money that I had as my, if you like, my cushion. But I decided not to take that opportunity purely because, and I think I mentioned this before, I just knew the time was now, the time was right for me. And that kind of demonstrates just how certain I was that call to leave that world and go and do something different was right for me at the time. I literally was at the point where I was there solely for the money, if I'm being perfectly honest. And even the thought of, well, hang on for another couple of years, really add to that part, and then things will be more comfortable for you when you go off and do something for yourself. But I always thought that you might do that for 2 years, and then there'd be a reason to stay for another one, and then another one, and then another one. You have to get to the point, I think, where you think, well, have I got enough? What is enough? And if you like, take that calculated risk, because it is a calculated risk. I think if you took that step with nothing, I think it'd be quite a well, it becomes not really a calculated risk, but just a risk, doesn't it then? So I suppose the first thing I would say is that you need to have some cash behind you, or I certainly felt I needed that before I took the jump. Sorry, what was your original question?
Well, let's do with having the cash cushion. So did you have a plan, like I need to have certain number of months of expenses in the bank, or how did you calculate the risk financially and to get you to a point where you felt comfortable jumping?
So I wanted to have a year, so a year's worth of. I wanted to have enough money to get me through a year here in Spain. So I wanted to have enough money to get me through until next summer, if you like. And obviously that number is different wherever you're living, whatever you kind of your lifestyle choices are. So that was the number for me. And it was a year because I thought, particularly after the summer I spent over here when I was throwing around a few ideas and really getting clear on what I was going to do. A year is a long time, and I think once you get clear on what you want to do and how you're going to do it, and you actually start doing it, it's very easy to think things. It's a lot more difficult to do them. Once you actually start doing it, things move, and things move quickly, and opportunities arise from places you never thought they would arise. And it's just a fantastic journey to be on. And so I think once you are clear on what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and you start doing it, and you see like that first client win, for example, or you've been poring over some web design things for weeks, and finally it clicks, and you think, no, this is what I'm going to do. Or just little wins, like you might put yourself out there. I'll talk a bit about my work now, I suppose, a bit later, but just little things when you put yourself out there and someone gets back in touch and say, we'd love to engage with you on this. We'd love to try and form some kind of partnership here. Things like that are things that I think when people are thinking about should I or shouldn't I, one of the things that always prevents people is the money factor. But another thing I think is people tend always to think about what if this goes wrong, what if that goes wrong, which is perfectly natural, it's perfectly normal. But I think one thing that can't be underestimated is that once you commit to it, once you commit to doing what you want to do, those opportunities are there, and those opportunities will present themselves. And I suppose the beauty of doing things for yourself is that you know which way you want to go things in, but often things branch off, and I think when you have an idea of what you want your business to look like, but as time goes by, things change and opportunities arise in certain places and other places, and some roads are dead ends, and that you thought would not be a dead end. You think, well, okay, so that isn't going to work, but this is potentially an opportunity. So I suppose it's very difficult when you're thinking of when you're thinking of should I or shouldn't I make the jump. It's very difficult to. Well, I suppose it's difficult to quantify, isn't it? You can't quantify. Well, think of the opportunities that are out there. Think of what this would mean to you. Think of what that would mean to you. Whilst it is very easy to quantify, well, I had a salary of X, now I will have a salary or an income of zero. It's and I suppose that's where the fear comes from, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I think is really important to point out or highlight is that you said it's about taking committed action. So one thing that I think is interesting is you really thought about the money, and you actually had a number. Okay, what will get me through a year in Spain? Which I agree, it definitely helps in taking that committed action. Once you really know what you're working with, you at least know, okay, this is what I want to have in savings. And if you don't have that, then you can work on creating that cushion. If you do have it, or if you have more than that, then you might actually realize, oh yeah, I actually do have enough here where I can take the risk and take the leap.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think there's a balance, because I think, and I don't know this, but I think there's a balance, because for example, a year it's sufficient to give you a little bit of security, isn't it? But it's not enough to make you, you can't rest on your laurels with that. Let's say you were very fortunate and you had bundles and bundles and bundles of cash. I'm not sure that would be so good, because I think you need to have that slight. There needs to be that slight element of fear there. I think that's quite important. Let's say somebody, I don't know, inherited a hell of a lot of money, and it enabled them to go away and pursue their passions and do what they wanted to do. I think having that slight fear there that says to you, look, if you don't make this work in X amount of months' time, there's no money in the pot. I think that's quite good. I find that a motivating thing. And so, like I said, I mean, I don't think it would be. I think it would be difficult to make that jump with nothing. But equally, I think if you've got an abundance of cash or reserves or whatever, I'm not sure. That's just a personal opinion.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So let's now switch gears and talk about when you took the leap, you moved to Spain, to Valencia. How did that edge get you to a point where you were like, okay, I need to create clients, or I need to make money? Talk about your journey from leaving your work to now creating money on your own terms and on your own effort.
So when I came across, I had a few ideas about things that I might want to do. One of them was around language, and had ideas about creating something that I saw in London, actually, which was Spanish for kind of informal Spanish classes for English people in London. But it was the way that the business was structured that I thought was quite good. And I thought maybe that's something that I could try and replicate here in Spain, not necessarily in Valencia, in Madrid or in Barcelona or wherever. And so I spent the summer looking into that, and I kind of, I got answers that I didn't really want to hear, at the time. And I kept plugging away at that. I spoke to a lot of people. I visited a lot of language schools. I spoke to a lot of people in the industry. And I got to the point where, there's a reason I was hearing these answers that I didn't want to hear. And I came to the conclusion that what I wanted to do, like I said, I was was trying to set up something following a particular structure or business model that I saw in the UK, and it just wasn't going to work. You know, in terms of demand, in terms of the way in which I wanted to do it, just wasn't going to work here. But I suppose the important learning point from that for me really was the fact that I had previously thought that my interest in language was an interest in teaching. And I suppose going through that process showed me that my interest in language is more of an interest in learning rather than teaching. And, you know, I think there's a difference there. You know, my passion is not teaching other people or trying to teach other people to learn a new language or to learn new language skills. My passion is actually me learning a new language and me learning new language skills. You know, it's quite a different thing. So, you know, so I came to the conclusion that business-wise, that wasn't going to work for me here in Spain, and it was the right decision. You know, I'd been kind of fighting against hearing things I didn't want to hear, but I came to the conclusion that wasn't going to work. But what I did want to do is continue with my Spanish, which I have done and I'm still doing. So I was in after I went through this process. I kind of thought, well, okay, so what is it? What do I want to do here? And so now I do three. The first one is I do freelance consulting, and this is you know, it's linked to my experience that I obtained back in the corporate world. So I do freelance consulting for corporates, be it in Spain or outside of Spain. Not just corporates either. There's, you know, some there's individuals here in Spain and foreigners that have come to Spain that have business interests, again, in and outside of Spain. So I do that, and that's basically my, if you like, my cash business. And I suppose you could link that to the whole money point, can't you? Really, and that what I decided was that to have that, I think it's important to have cash projects as well as long-term projects, or it certainly is for me anyway. And so I decided that the consulting work, so like I said, it's all freelance. I don't work on site. I work either from home or in my office here in Valencia, and that's my cash project, if you like. And the benefit of that, you know, is that, you know, given my experience that I had those 10 years in the corporate world, the accountancy qualification, the tax experience, etc., you know, that can still command a reasonable level of income, and I can use that to support the other two projects, which are I suppose the more long-term ones. The first one being providing tax advice for expats here in Valencia, for British expats here in Valencia. And the key here is that, you know, there's a lot of, here in Spain, you'll find Spanish lawyers that can give you Spanish advice. However, anything outside of Spain, they won't be able to tell you a lot, which is, you know, perfectly normal. They're Spanish tax qualified, they're Spanish lawyers, and they've always worked in Spanish tax. Why would they? But what you find, particularly in the Mediterranean here in Spain, or as you know, is that a lot of the foreign people here still have assets or income streams abroad. And so where I saw if you like, the niche in the market or the gap in the market here was to be able to be the guy that can say to the client, okay, you've got this in the UK, you've got this here in Spain, this is what's happened over the last few years, these are your plans for the next few years. So somebody to, if you like, link both sides together. So again, taking the experience I had from the corporate world and providing British expats here in Spain with both UK advice and Spanish advice. So the UK advice would come through me, and the Spanish advice would come through me and the partnerships that I've managed to form here with Spanish tax practices. So that's long-term project one. That's something that's, you know, it's very much getting up and running at the moment. The website, we're expecting to go live end of February next year. But as I mentioned before, that's been not a straightforward process. So that's long-term project number one, and long-term project number two, which again I've just recently started, is what I suppose I'd call professional education. And this involves, and this is for anybody and everybody really. It's not something specific to Spain. But what I do is I help people to write CVs, to write application forms, to develop a LinkedIn profile, to help them with interview preparation, presenting themselves in an interview situation, presenting a meeting, seminars, presentations. So again, if you like, taking a lot of what I learned over the last 10 years, but applying it to something that I'm developing myself personally. So at the moment, that's quite heavily focused on the CV writing, the profiling, helping people with application forms, etc. But again, 2016 is a big year for that, as it is for the business with British expats here in Spain. So like I said, I do those three things at the moment, and the important thing for me is that the nature of those three projects enables me to be absolutely 100% in control of what I say yes to, what I say no to, how I spend my days, how I spend my weekends, how I spend spare time, if you like. It allows me to prioritize what I think is important for each one of these separate projects and focus on that one particular week, maybe on something else a week after, and just manage my time and therefore my life better. And that was I think I mentioned before that one of the things I thought about working in the corporate world was that you're never in charge of your time. You may think you're in charge of your time in that you know what you're going to spend these 7.5 hours today doing, and you have a calendar with what you're going to be doing for the next couple of weeks, months, etc. But all of that is dictated by, it's not dictated by you, it's dictated by tasks that need to be done for the organisation or for people within the organisation. Now, everything that I do on a daily basis, I dictate what I do, and I dictate what I need to do. For example, I mentioned the consultancy work that I do as a cash project, basically. So I'm doing one at the moment, which I expect to conclude. Well, I originally expected it to conclude in December, might be January now. I was approached about another project that needed somebody basically to do immediately, and it was probably about a 3 or 4 week project, I think. But because I was what I was doing with this current contract that I'm doing, and because what I needed to get done for those other two businesses, I was able to say, well, you know what, thank you for approaching me, thank you for the interest, but it's not something I'll be able to take on at the moment. If we can do this in February, then I might have more capacity to do it. So, and that's something that I value very highly, and I think I value it now even more than I thought I valued it. That ability to be completely in control of how I spend my days.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm rambling here, Erica.
No, because you bring up a good point. The whole idea of a cash project, and the best way I've heard it described as an entrepreneur, you have your cash projects and you have your sexy projects. So because money is a real need, and we need to pay rent and pay for bills and pay for groceries and that kind of thing, you have your projects where it purely is for the cash, and it's about getting cash funneled into you on a short-term basis. And then you have your sexy projects, which, you know, there's a potential high reward, but it takes a little bit longer to get off the ground. Maybe there is more risk involved. So how do you decide, you know, how do you look at your day, look at the pie of your time and decide, okay, I'm going to devote this much time to the cash stuff, and I'm going to devote this much time to the sexy stuff? Because for a lot of us at the beginning, we think, okay, you know, if this could go the way I want it, it's going to be exponential growth. My idea is going to blow up. It's going to be amazing. It doesn't always work out that way. And then you have to get really realistic about, okay, you know, rent's coming up next month, or I need to have this cash coming in. So how do you manage that? How do you manage your time?
I think, I suppose, how do I deal with that? So I suppose what I would say is I think it's important to plan. So, I mean, I think a lot of this comes down to, well, I think it's important to plan, but I think it's important to, if you like, plan flexibility as well, if that makes sense. I think if you have a rigid plan over, well, I'm going to do this for the next month, I'm going to do this for these next couple of days, and then I'm going to do this. I think you can. That doesn't work for me, because so if you have that mindset, you miss opportunities, and you miss opportunities to maybe bring something else to what you're doing that you may have missed if you've got very much a mindset of, right, okay, these 2 weeks is that, I'm going to put everything else aside, and then next week is that, you know. I think it's good to have an idea, particularly, you need to be aware of your financial position. So if the coffers are running a bit low, then, you know, common sense tells you maybe you need to put a bit more time into the cash projects. But at the same time, I think it's important, or I've certainly found it important, to be able to flex that plan, you know, because if you don't, I think you can miss opportunities. You know, I suppose an example springs to mind the other day, where I was working on one of these cash projects that I'm doing, and I'd said to myself, actually, I said, okay, Thursday and Friday, I really need to put some time into this now. And then the contact I have here in Valencia, he gave me a call on Thursday, and he said, I've just started seeing this girl. I said, oh right. I said, well, why are you phoning me to tell me that? He said, oh well, she started a relocation company for Dutch expats that are coming to live in Spain. I said, oh right. I said, okay, and how long has she been doing that for? Yada yada yada. The conversation went on. And you know, on the Friday, I met up with this lady, and we had a conversation around, well, okay, so this is what she does, and this is and a potential partnership, you know. So Dutch person comes over to live in Spain, and through the relocation company gets introduced to me in terms of, well, how am I going to deal with my basically getting set up here in Spain, in Valencia, what's the position with taxes, etc., etc. You know, now, had I not made the time for that and stuck rigidly to what I said I was going to do on Thursday and Friday, that opportunities, well, it may have gone, you know. So I think it's important to be aware of your financial situation, and obviously use your common sense in terms of, if the bank balance is getting low, that dictates where you need to spend a bit more of your time, but also to build in an element of flexibility.
So it's that balance again, isn't it, of making sure you're not wasting time, you're doing things that are productive. But you're right, those opportunities always do tend to find you, and it's also being able to flexibly then switch to that opportunity if it arises, and not be so rigid that you're like, okay, now I need to spend 10 hours on my cash project.
I think one thing that I found, I suppose initially I found it quite difficult, and one thing I'm certainly a lot better at now is, I think when you work for yourself, and you may agree, you may disagree, you have to be very, very disciplined with how you spend your time. So you know, for example, when you work from home, you know, some people find that easier than others. If I work from home all the time, I know for a fact that, you know, maybe I've just sent an email or something, I would wander onto, I don't know, Facebook or LinkedIn or something, and end up wasting half an hour of time. So I think you do have to be disciplined in terms of ensuring that you're spending your time most productively. Which, like I said, initially I found that quite difficult. Just again, because you know, we're talking about big change here. We're talking about a fundamental change in the way in which you live your life, and I think it comes with these difficulties that you have to overcome. And you can either choose to overcome them, or to find a way that works for you. And I suppose if that's not something that you want to do, then probably working for yourself is probably not for you, I would say. Mm-hmm. I think it's finding, what am I trying to say? I think it's finding what works for you. And I think, you know, you've probably spoken to a lot of other people that would tell you differently, or tell you that they manage their time differently. For me, I suppose for me what works is being focused in terms of knowing this is what I need to get done, and so this is how I'm going to spend my time. But also knowing that at times, quite often actually, well, certainly I feel like I need to be flexible with that. Maybe that's part of the process of trying to build things, trying to build businesses to attract clients and to keep clients. It's the fact that you can't be too rigid in how you approach things.
Yeah, and I think it's also continually assessing the whole time thing, because it changes based on a number of things: time of year, if you're really busy, if things are not so busy, continually looking at your own productivity. So I go ahead.
That's probably a better way of putting it.
Yeah, so I think, you know, it's time and money, I think, are the most valuable resources we have when it comes to doing things on our own. And so on the time piece, then how do you factor in just leisure activities and things that you like to do? Because as I'm sure you know, you could spend your whole day, all of your time, weekends, nights, days, just working on the business. So how do you create that time for you to do things that you love? Because that's part of the reason why you quit as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I always try and do the vast majority of what I need to do during the week. I like to keep weekends free. But you know, there's occasions when you might want to do something on, I don't know, a Wednesday afternoon or something. And what I always try and do is I always try and say, for example, you know, the week coming, I know that on Friday afternoon I'm not going to be doing any work because there's something that I want to go to. So I'll sit there tonight when I figure out how I'm going to try and attack this week, and I'll build into the week. What I would have been doing on that Friday afternoon, I would build it in somewhere else. If that means doing some work on a Sunday, that's not a problem. But generally, I like to try and keep the weekends free. But if I'm going to do something that takes time out of, you know, a part of the day I would usually be working, I'll try and recover that time somewhere, because, you know, I think it's important for me at the moment because of the fact that, you know, I don't have established businesses yet. And so I always feel like I have to be putting in 120% here to try and make these things work. And so I wouldn't feel comfortable, I don't know, for example, taking 2 days to go and do something and not trying to recover that time somewhere. Maybe down the line, you know, a few years down the line, it might be different. But at the moment, because there is quite frankly simply so much to do. I feel like if I'm going to take time out to do something for me personally, I like to try and recover that. But one thing I would say though is that, you know, there is so much to do. That there is seemingly a never-ending list of things that you need to get done for business. But it's never to the point. It is never to the point now where I think, you know what, I really need a break. I really need a holiday. And I think the reason for that is because I like what I'm doing. I never, you know, or as yet, I haven't come to a point where I thought, you know what, I need to put all this down and get away for a week, because I'm enjoying what I'm doing. You know, what I'm doing, I believe in. I believe that it can be successful. I believe that it can, in time, become something of scale. And yeah, it's to be honest, it certainly up to now, I've not been in the position where I've thought I need a break, because yeah, I suppose your life becomes what you do, really. And you know, you always have to be on your game, if you like, because you never ever know where the next opportunity might spring up from. You know, it's, you know, if you, I suppose the analogy I would use is that I never feel comfortable just nipping out of the flat now in, say, my joggers and a t-shirt to go to the shop to get something, because I always think, well, I could walk into somebody who could be, you know, a client for 10 years to come. And so I always feel like I have to be on my game, if you like. But it's never a it's not a stress. It's not a worry. It's just that's what I do now. That's what my life is now. And probably the reason why up to now I've not felt like you know, taking any kind of time off to do holidays or anything. It's not really. Well, this is the first time now on this call that I've really thought about it, to be honest. Okay.
And yet you've taken holidays. Like, I know you've traveled this year and you've taken downtime. So how do you consider that, given it's not, okay, I need a holiday because I'm so stressed and I hate this so much, I need to do it. How do you consider that leisure time that you take?
But I never really feel like there's I never draw a firm distinction, really. I'm sure it's the same for your business. You know, you can be traveling, you know, wherever you like. For example, like, you know, I'm going home for Christmas for 2 weeks, back to the UK. And I know that I will be doing an element of work, if you like, every day. But it's almost like you don't consider it work. You just consider it as, well, this is just part of life now, trying to build things, trying to build sustainable businesses. And so I know when I go home for Christmas, I don't consider it a 2-week holiday. I consider it, I'm just going to another location, and I'll be keeping things ticking over from there.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point, which is that, you know, in a way, as an entrepreneur, it's working is more all-consuming. It consumes more of you. But the reason for that is because, like you said, there's no distinction between life and business. You know, it's just kind of life, and you find a way to manage it. And fortunately, because you have more control over your time, you can decide how much you want to put towards your business efforts and how much then you want to spend doing things that you love. And I think that's the biggest distinction, not necessarily that you work less, because I agree, as an entrepreneur, you know, I just came back from the States and I was working and writing, and it's a Sunday afternoon and you and I are having this conversation, and then I'll write an article after. So that being said, it doesn't feel like work, you know. And I was a lawyer and having to go into the office on a Sunday, it was a real drag. You know, I really just was so unhappy having to do that. But I'm happy to have this conversation. I'm happy to write, because I feel like it's more integral to who I am and what I do. So I hear you saying the same thing.
I am, yeah. It is very much the same. I suppose as well in the corporate world, when there are times when you end up in the office at 9, 10 o'clock at night, and you can there can be times where you really resent that, particularly when you end up going in on a Sunday, for example. But I think when you're doing something for yourself, it's different. It, it's hard to describe in words, I think, but it's different because you're doing it for yourself. Mm, yeah, it's different.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just want to thank you for allowing us into your world, because I think it is important for people that are thinking about taking the leap from employment to entrepreneurship, to just really get an insider's view as to what that looks like. And so you being so candid and open with things that you've experienced, challenges, successes, I think it can really help others that are wanting to do the same. So thank you so much, Matt, for taking the time to talk to
No,
me.
no problem. I think the hardest part is the hardest part is undoubtedly taking the jump, making the jump. But I think a close second to that is those first few months after you've taken the jump, because you'll experience a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings, you'll go through a lot of thought processes that are completely alien to you. And I think you have to persevere and get through that. Um, I think, yeah, and I think that takes quite a lot of willpower, and you have to be quite strong-minded and really set on knowing that you're going to make this work, whatever. Um, because it would be very easy, and like I mentioned before, during those first few months after you leave, it's very easy to kind of, like I said, you're confronted with thoughts and emotions that you haven't had to deal with before. It'd be very easy to go back to what you know. Very easy to go back and think, well, that wasn't for me. I'll go back to what I know and what I've done. So I think, yeah, I think taking the jump is the hardest step, but I think those first few months are a close second, and it really tests your commitment to what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. Perseverance, I suppose, would be the key key word for me, I think, and it's a lot of hard work.
That's a beautiful way to end. It's hard work.
But good hard work, not bad, stressful hard work.
Right. So make that distinction. It's hard work, but it's good hard work. It's work that can fill you up. And the key really is perseverance. If you can persevere, push through those first few months, then things do get easier. Things really do get better. You learn how to handle things better too. So thanks for ending us out on that note.
And things and things change, don't they? Things evolve, and you can have a fixed idea of what you want to do. But as time goes by, like I mentioned before, some things you run into dead ends. Some opportunities will arise where you never thought they would. But with if you persevere and if you're willing to really put it in and commit to it, there's another life there. Yeah, I mean, it's you can read a lot of books, can't you, that kind of paint this picture of either working for yourself or being a business owner, or and they paint this picture that the grass is so much greener on the other side. And I think the grass is greener. The grass is definitely, or from my experience, the grass is greener. But I think you really have to commit to it and really be 120% in and willing to put it in to reap those benefits. I think.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Matt, for joining us, and thank you for tuning in. If this is a helpful video to you, I would love to receive your comments. I'm reachable by email at thebusinessalchemist@gmail.com, thebusinessalchemist@gmail.com. And if you know anyone that could benefit from watching this video, I would really appreciate it if you would share. Thank you so much, Matt, and I will let you get back to your Sunday.
Okay, thanks, Erica.
Take care. Bye.
Right.